From the nation's capital, the Conservative Caucus presents Conservative Roundtable, an in-depth look at today's most important issues.
Welcome to Conservative Roundtable. I'm Howard Phillips, chairman of the Conservative Caucus, which sponsors these broadcasts, now being shown on more than 120 stations all over America. We thank you for joining us. Our guest tonight is a person for whom I have very high regard, and he's got a remarkable background, and I'm going to take a couple of minutes to share that with you. Chris Farrell joined Judicial Watch in 1999 as the organization's Director of Investigations and Research. He's been a member of their board of directors since 2003. He was a distinguished military graduate from Fordham University with a BA in history, whereupon he accepted a regular Army commission and served as a military intelligence officer, specializing in counterintelligence and human intelligence. Chris is a graduate of the Military Intelligence Officers Basic and Advanced Courses, the U.S. Army Advanced Counterintelligence Training Course, the Combined Armed Services Staff School of the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College, the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency's Military Operations Training Course, and also an entity in Hamburg, Germany. He's pursued additional graduate studies in the national security arena and has specialized in unconventional warfare and terrorism, following command and staff assignments that included 3 tours of duty in the Federal Republic of Germany and 1 tour at Supreme Allied Headquarters in Europe. Chris returned to civilian life as a contractor to the defense and intelligence communities. Many other things. He's written widely. He's appeared widely on television and in radio. He's a member of Columbia University's National Center for Disaster Preparedness, the Association of Former Intelligence Officers, the American Society of Access Professionals, etc., etc., etc. He's a constituent member of the State Department's Overseas Security Advisory Council. He and his family reside in Virginia. Now, what in the world does all of this intelligence stuff have to do with Judicial Watch?
Well, I tell you, Howard, what it really does is it brings a certain skill set that has to do with research and investigative work. And that's really what I head up at Judicial Watch, is our research and investigative department. And my background as an intelligence officer really lends itself to that sort of work. And that was the connection. That was the lineup. And
you've got a particular subject of your research, and you've been following this subject, this individual, for some time, and that is a United States Senator from New York, Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Indeed.
Tell us about that.
Sure. Back when the Clinton Library, which is part of it, is a foundation effort.
Have you been there?
I have. In fact,
it looks like a what do they call it?
A trailer.
A trailer. Triple wide is what it looks. It looks like a triple wide trailer on stilts.
Since the library, or actually the archives at the library, because the National Archives administers the documents, and then there's the library itself, which is sort of the museum side of it. But the National Archives administers all of President Clinton's records. And we've made 6 trips down there over the last couple of years, poured over thousands of pages of documents, written 3 different special reports, one of which was on the Clinton's abortion policies and RU-486, some other national security reports we've written. But in particular, we make, as an organization, Judicial Watch makes very aggressive use of open records laws, Freedom of Information Act. So we use that as the legal vehicle to gain access to these records and documents. And back in 2006, given that Mrs. Clinton had made all these gestures and sort of indications that she would run for the presidency, we asked for her health care files and also for her calendar, for her official record as First Lady, thinking that since she's going to run on her record, well, we would like to see what that record is. So we made those requests back in 2006. The Clinton Library dragged their feet, played rope-a-dope, kind of, stalled this thing to the point where after 2 years of playing nice, trying to get along, we sued them, and we're in federal court right now with the archives.
Well, recently there was a debate between Barack Obama and Hillary Rodham Clinton, and Tim Russert, apparently playing off your work, asked Mrs. Clinton about this.
He did, and in fact, when he asked her, he said, these documents have now been produced by the archives and given to President Clinton for his review and release. And why aren't they released yet? Because they've had them for about a month now. And she kind of, again, enjoyed the ambiguity of the process, because it is somewhat Byzantine, the process for getting these documents released. But they're also a particular specialty of ours. You know, getting these records is what we do. And she's enjoying that ambiguity, and the fact that for the most part the public and very often the press really don't spend a lot of time trying to figure out what the process is. So she kind of used a little smoke and mirrors and didn't accurately answer the question. The real point of the question is that if they directed the documents to be released now, today, they would be and they could be, and they choose not to.
What do you think might be discovered upon their release?
I think there's a fascinating collection of things that would be available. First of all, her calendar and her official record as First Lady. Who was she meeting with? Who had access to her? The timing of certain things, whether it's legislation, policy decisions, any number of different governmental activities that she had a role in. I think it would really be very illuminating to see what exactly her function was as First Lady. And then secondly, there's an entire universe of documents having to do with her health care initiative, which, based upon the debates, seems to be a recurring theme. And she says that she learned from this effort in '93. Well, what are the policy memos? What were the recommendations? Because many of them were never revealed to the public. There was an effort made, and it failed, and they were sort of humiliated, and they withdrew. Well, now let's see what was discussed. What were they offering? Because the public has a right to know.
What else are you looking for with Hillary?
Well, I mean, I think that the records themselves when it comes to health care are enormously important, because they would touch on, of course, her efforts to nationalize essentially 1/7 of the economy. And there would be any number of different areas that would be of interest, whether it had to do with big pharmaceutical lobbyists in the industry or insurance companies, policies about that, cost control measures, any number of things that I think are of great interest to the public.
When they started their political career, they were poor as church mice. They had no money. They'd never owned a home. They always lived in public housing, government housing. Now they are multi-millionaires.
Indeed.
Bill gets paid $20 million from some fellow in India for doing him a favor.
Right.
He gets paid substantial sums for making speeches.
He also just got a package from Ron Burkle to walk away from UKIPA in California. Again, multi-million dollars. No one knows exactly how much.
And recently she loaned $5 million to her presidential campaign. And that money was not just hers, that was Bill's too. Doesn't that pose some problems of disclosure, compliance with FEC regulations, et cetera?
Yeah, it's very curious that, to date, she has, at least as we speak this evening, she has not released her IRS filings.
Yeah, and as Tim Russert pointed out, it's a joint return, so there's a lot of mingling there.
Yeah.
And so she could be hit with criticism for many of the things in which her husband has been involved.
And, of course, he has any number of foreign connections and sits on various boards and has taken fees from foreign corporations. So who is funding her campaign? Because that's when you track the money back, when you walk it back, at some point you have to say, well, where's the money coming from? And if so, let's assign it.
These things are interesting. We discovered recently that George Soros and Teresa Heinz Kerry were funding John McCain's activities in the early 2000s.
Yeah, I mean, and that shouldn't be surprising because, a lot of these folks who are trying to leverage influence play both sides of the street, and they want to be able to have, their person situated, or at least positioned in a way that however things break, they still have an advantage.
Now, the Clintons have always been known for sharp elbows and playing hardball. They must be aware of what you're doing.
Indeed.
Have you had any sign that they're trying to interfere with your work or intimidate people who are helping you?
Nothing overt. We, of course, a few years ago were subjected to an IRS audit, as many conservative organizations were. I'm very proud to say that we came through that audit without a single finding against us. All of our papers were in order, and we've been fully audited and in full compliance with the law. But nonetheless, those sorts of efforts are made because it costs you time, it costs you money, it costs you accountants and lawyers. So there's an effort.
And there's no limit on the IRS's ability to spend money on lawyers. They spend our money.
None.
And all power to the prosecutors.
And you have to remember that the way they view it is that, the process is the punishment.
Yeah.
They want to put you through the meat grinder and jack up your expenses. They're not really worried about the result.
Chris, one of the issues on which the Conservative Caucus has been focusing, and it's really our top issue right now, is our effort to block the North American Union. We have to take a break, but you've done yeoman work in using the Freedom of Information Act to pull out information about the Security and Prosperity Partnership, the North American Union. After the break, I'd like you to talk about that.
Sure.
Please stay with us. We'll be back with Chris Farrell right after these messages. The Conservative Caucus is working to raise up a new generation of leaders who understand the principles of the Founding Fathers as set forth in the Constitution of the United States. In Article 1, Section 8, it says, Congress shall have the power to coin money and regulate the value thereof and of foreign coin and to fix the standard of weights and measures. Congress has abdicated that duty, that responsibility, to the Federal Reserve, which now, by inflating the money supply on a continuing basis, each day taxes us more than Congress does by diminishing the value of our savings and our earnings. The Conservative Caucus, almost alone among national conservative organizations, is working to restore constitutional government, whether the issue is money or something else.
www.conservativeusa.org, 703-938-9626.
Here's how you can become a citizen lobbyist and influence how your representatives vote. Write a letter to your congressmen and senators. Speak out on a call-in talk radio program. Write a letter to the editor of your local newspaper and call the Conservative Caucus for more information at 703-938-9626.
There is a better way to have fun with history. Visit americaslibrary.gov. Log on, play around, learn something.
More than the entire population of Cincinnati. More than all the men and women in the Marine Corps. More than 4 times the number of unemployed auto workers. Since 1980, over 500,000 Americans who make clothing and home fashions have lost their jobs because we don't realize the impact of buying imported goods. So if you think looking for the Made in the USA label doesn't matter,
Next.
It matters.
Welcome back. I'm Howard Phillips with our guest, Chris Farrell of Judicial Watch. Chris, Judicial Watch, with your leadership, has done a tremendous job getting facts out concerning the Security and Prosperity Partnership and the North American Union. Let me just read a few of the headlines on your statements concerning this. Judicial Watch files lawsuit seeking access to Security and Prosperity Partnership Advisory Group meetings and records. Judicial Watch seeks access to North American Competitiveness Council meetings under federal open meetings laws. New Security and Prosperity Partnership records reveal proposal for U.S. and Canadian funded grants for Mexico. Judicial Watch uncovers Chertoff implementation memo on SPP. Judicial Watch obtains SPP records detailing border management and travel recommendations. Judicial Watch releases details of SPP's environmental agenda. Judicial Watch releases USDA documents on food safety, emergency preparedness, and regulations from Security and Prosperity Partnership. Judicial Watch releases Pentagon records from North American Forum meetings. New Security and Prosperity Partnership of North America documents detail influenza pandemic and e-commerce working groups. Newly uncovered Commerce Department documents detail SPP info. You know, the European Union celebrated its 50th anniversary recently, but it didn't exist 50 years ago. There was an incremental march, step by step, to create what is now the European Union.
Absolutely.
And in the European Union, and I have visited Strasbourg and Luxembourg and Brussels and met with officials of the EU, you've got unelected bureaucrats setting policy that overrules and displaces the policies of the member states of the European Union. And if you are a citizen of one of the EU states, you can travel without visa or passport to any of the other 26 or 27 countries in the EU. This is what Robert Pastor of the Council on Foreign Relations crafted in his design for North American community, and this is what George Bush is pushing forward with his so-called Security and Prosperity Partnership. The Conservative Caucus, with the help of many others, went to Montebello, Canada for the most recent meeting of the SPP. We're going to be in New Orleans for the next meeting of the SPP. And what is outrageous about the SPP is that in its process of quote-unquote harmonization, policies are being made by unelected bureaucrats that in effect override decisions made by the Congress of the United States, by U.S. government officials. And if this thing is fully implemented, you will see this tripartite conglomerate overruling by their own design our judiciary, our Congress, many, many other things. How did you get involved in this issue, and what have you done about it?
We've made use again of the open records and open meetings laws to unearth literally thousands of pages of documents. And we made those documents available to our other friends in like-minded organizations, whether it be Eagle Forum or Jerry Corsi or other news outlets, to try to have them write on this subject and educate their supporters and get the news out to the public that what you described isn't something that may happen. What you just described is happening now, today. This harmonization that you talked about of mid-level bureaucrats, taking U.S., Canadian, and Mexican regulations and rules and twisting them to be in sync is a reality. It's now and today. And of course, to a very large...
There are what, 21 working groups?
There's more than that. I mean, there are probably something like 36 working groups. And there are 16 different federal agencies at all different levels involved in these working groups. And that's just the U.S. angle, the U.S. perspective on this. Then there's a business arm of the Security and Prosperity Partnership, and that's called the NAC, the North American Competitiveness Council. And that is Fortune 500 companies who have their multinational, not U.S. interests, but multinational interests in having one standard, one harmonized law between the three countries. And they make recommendations that are mind-boggling. In the event of a flu pandemic, their recommendation is keep all the borders open and don't involve any sort of, or don't institute any sort of of medical procedures that would quarantine people, which is madness. No medical professional would tell you during a pandemic flu not to quarantine, but that's what they offer. They suggest that the U.S. electrical grid be integrated with Mexico. They're recommending that essentially taxes, a North American tax on Canadian and U.S. citizens be imposed to finance infrastructure projects in Mexico. Again, this isn't sort of prospective. This is what they're saying must be implemented now.
This is laughed off by many in the media. It's laughed off in public statements by administration officials. But Bush has said that he favors a policy that would economically integrate Mexico, Canada, and the United States.
That's why it's so important, in our view. Instead of, when they start to laugh it off, you point them back to their own documents. This isn't my opinion. This isn't something I've dreamed up. These are government documents. Look at their own documents, and you explain what's funny about it.
Yeah, and they have one document that comes out every year that is printed in French, Spanish, and English that talks about these things that are being done.
Exactly, yeah.
And in Congress, thank goodness, there's Virgil Good of Virginia, who's introduced House Concurrent Resolution 40, which has a couple of dozen co-sponsors now, and they are calling upon the President to repudiate SPP and North American Union. But most members of Congress are blissfully ignorant about this.
There has not been a single congressional hearing on the subject. and it's been running now for going on 3 years. It'll be 3 years in a couple of months. And for 3 years, this is, mid-level bureaucrats with laptops have been dreaming up ideas and harmonizing rules and regulations. Again, not at the black and white letter law level, but at the implementation level, at the rule and regulation level. This harmonization has been going on. We have the documents that show it and prove it, government documents. And there's even an awareness on the part of political officials in all three countries that there's very little, A, awareness, or B, support for this process. And the reason we know that is because we have meeting notes, the official meeting notes from a meeting up in Canada of the North American Forum, where they acknowledge that for the most part nobody knows and nobody cares. We're doing this under the radar. And the briefing chart says evolution by stealth.
Yeah.
They are deliberately going about this in a way that is not made public broadly, and the public is simply unaware.
And Vicente Vox on Larry King Live said, oh, yes, down the road, maybe we will have a common currency, and it could be called the Amero, which would be analogous to the euro under the European Union. And you've got the president of Mexico, Felipe Gonzalez, publicly enthusiastic about what is going on with the SPP and the North American Union. And many people believe that the reason Bush has been so stubborn on amnesty and immigration and the delay in the border barriers is because under the NAU there'd be no border. People could travel at will among the territories of Canada, Mexico, and the United States. Just as now Bush, pursuant to NAFTA, which is at the heart of so much of this, is letting Mexican truck drivers come in the United States, even though members of Congress oppose it, and despite the fact that many of these drivers do not speak English and cannot read road signs.
Precisely. I mean, this is NAFTA on steroids. Yeah. This is a nightmare sort of scenario where another one of these recommendations that is so outrageous is that, one of the things they say is that if a person approaches the U.S. border without proper documentation, he should be educated about his options and allowed to go on his way.
We have to take a break. We'll be right back with Chris Farrell. For those of us who love the Constitution of the United States and the principles of liberty on which it was premised, one of the worst years in American history was 1913. Among other things, that was the year in which the 16th Amendment was added to the Constitution, giving the federal government the opportunity to impose a graduated income tax and to, in other ways, directly invade our privacy and rob us of our resources. Until 1913, the revenue tariff was the major source of income for Uncle Sam. The Conservative Caucus strives to repeal the 16th Amendment, abolish the Internal Revenue Service, and eliminate the income tax. Please join with us in this important cause.
The Conservative Caucus, www.conservativeusa.org or 703-938-9626.
Find curious facts from America's past at loc.gov, the Library of Congress website.
Here's how you can become a citizen lobbyist and influence how your representatives vote. Write a letter to your congressmen and senators. Speak out on a call-in talk radio program. Write a letter to the editor of your local newspaper and call the Conservative Caucus for more information at 703-938-9626.
Welcome back. I'm Howard Phillips, chairman of the Conservative Caucus, which sponsors Conservative Roundtable now in more than 120 communities around the United States. If you're interested in the kinds of issues that we discuss on Conservative Roundtable, please check out our website, www.conservativeusa.org. If you want to receive, with no cost or obligation, some of our written materials, including information about the Security and Prosperity Partnership and the North American Union, fax us your name and address, 703-281-4108. You know, Chris, our top issues recently have included building the coalition to block the North American Union, fighting amnesty, and some other things like blocking the UN Law of the Sea Treaty.
Sure.
But I think one of the most dangerous things this country has ever confronted is the SPP and the NAU.
I couldn't agree with you more.
And people are just blissfully unaware of it. Our status as an independent constitutional republic will be terminated step by step by step unless some people wake up. It grieves me that none of the presidential debates have focused on this issue. They didn't even speak of the Trans-Texas Corridor. I was chatting with Ralph Nader the other day, who agrees with us about the problems of SPP and NAU, and who's really angry about the NAFTA superhighway. And he may be joining us at our news conference in New Orleans, along with others to be named, and I hope you. But the mainstream media, the drive-by media, hasn't really given this the attention it deserves. And even some of our conservative talk show hosts find it too hot to handle. It's a real issue. We've got to get their attention. You've got to get them to work on it.
Absolutely.
I met with Brent Bozell recently, a man I greatly admire, and he was trying to get his friends Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh to focus on it. He's a member of our coalition, as are you and Judicial Watch, but so far no luck there. Talk to us some more about what your priorities are at SPP. By the way, if at Judicial Watch, if you want to learn more about Judicial Watch, check out the contact information on the screen.
Sure. I mean, I think that for folks who look at the SPP and North American Union, they have to be very concerned because the model, and the model that exists today, is the European Union. The European Union started out as coal and steel agreements between France and Germany. It advanced on to be the Treaty of Rome, and from there the European Economic Community, and now the European Union. It's an incrementalist approach. The guy who's the godfather of the SPP, Dr. Pastor out of American University.
Robert Pastor, Jimmy Carter's National Security Advisor.
Precisely. He is the architect of this, the philosophical godfather. He has a model. He said that it's the model, and he's going to apply it to the North American Union. So the fact that there isn't
By the way, he said at a conference the Hudson Institute sponsored that if it weren't for Lou Dobbs and Howard Phillips, we'd be home free on this.
Well, congratulations. It's good credit for you.
I thanked him and asked him to do it again.
I mean, the thing here is that that's their model. They're going to act on it, and to think otherwise is crazy.
Chris, thanks for joining us, and thank you for watching Conservative Roundtable.